In this world, individuals can gain extraordinary abilities by consuming the fruit of the skill tree. For Light, his fate was quite different. On the day when skills were to be bestowed, Light and his childhood friend Lena were on their way to the church to undergo the ceremony. Light had always aspired to be an adventurer, so he would be thrilled with any skill that was combat-oriented. Lena, on the other hand, wasn't too concerned about what skill she might receive, as long as it meant she could stay by Light's side. Still, she was a bit nervous since no one really knows what kind of skill they'll get till they eat the fruit. But Light was sure they would both get amazing skills. When he and Lena went into the church that day, the Holy Sister told them all about how the skill fruits work. You're granted a skill once you eat the fruit, and it will guarantee you a job in any related field of your choice. They were given the opportunity to choose any one of these fruits to gain their skill. But there was one unbreakable rule: you could only consume one skill fruit in your entire life. Attempting to eat a second fruit would result in poisoning. Many had lost their lives because they were dissatisfied with their skill and decided to take a second fruit. The Holy Sister emphasized this point, making it absolutely clear that eating more than one fruit carried a 100% fatality rate. Lena was taken aback by how dangerous the fruits could be, but the Holy Sister reassured her that as long as she refrained from eating a second fruit, there was no cause for concern. With the warnings out of the way, the Holy Sister told them to begin selecting their fruit. Lena stepped up first. She took a bite out of one of the fruits, and she immediately felt something happening to her body. There was a blinding light. Holy Sister realized this must be the legendary Sword Saint skill. It was incredibly rare, so she never thought she would get to see someone acquire it in person. But now that Lena was officially a Sword Saint, she was destined to become one of the greatest adventurers in the country. Light was genuinely thrilled for Lena and congratulated her on obtaining such an incredible skill. But now, it was his turn. He approached the altar and carefully selected a skill fruit for himself. While he didn't expect to gain something as extraordinary as the Sword Saint skill, he still hoped for a decent combat skill that would allow him to stand alongside Lena in battle. However, as he took a bite and felt the skill flow into his body, his heart sank. The Holy Sister did her best to offer some encouragement. Light was devastated that his dreams of being an adventurer had been ruined, so he asked if he could try again. But the sister was very clear about the 100% fatality rate, so she wouldn't let him eat another fruit. Lena tried to cheer Light up and told him she would stay in the village and grow fruits with him since she didn't care what she did as long as they were together. Lena's Sword Saint skill was a once-in-a-decade marvel, so she wasn't going to let her waste that talent by becoming a farmer. She demanded that Lena become an adventurer for the sake of the country, and in fact, she would be taking her to the royal capital immediately so she could begin her training there. Lena couldn't find the courage to defy the Holy Sister's demands, so she was taken away. However, she made a heartfelt promise to return for Light one day. 3 months had gone by since that life-changing day, and Light was doing his best to embrace his new reality by focusing on his role as a farmer. Life wasn't terrible for him, as long as he kept those nagging thoughts buried deep in the back of his mind. One day, he headed into town. As he was walking back to his house, he noticed a poster with some news about Lena. She had apparently been promoted to S rank in the 3 months since she left the village and was doing incredibly well for herself. Of course, he was happy for her, but thinking about how well she was doing just made him feel like an absolute failure, even though he knew he didn't have the skill to become an adventurer. Light had been training every day in hopes that he might naturally unlock a sword skill or something. He swung his sword at a tree stump over and over, convinced that if he could manage to split it in half, he could prove himself strong enough to become an adventurer through his own effort. But hard work doesn't always yield results, and all he gained from his relentless training were a pair of bruised wrists. Collapsing to the ground in defeat, he began to wonder if Lena still remembered him. She had promised to return, but with all the fame and fortune she must have achieved, he wouldn't be surprised if she had completely forgotten both his name and his face. Just then, a little girl named Ayla walked up to Light and said she brought him a cup of water. She was pretty much an orphan, and the village chief didn't want to deal with her. Light saw that she had nowhere to go, so he decided to take her in, and the two had been living together ever since. Ayla told him she was done with dinner, so if he wanted to, he could come inside had to eat, and Light happily obliged. He took his first bite of the food, and while he ate, Ayla asked him how today's harvest went. All in all, Light remarked that today's profits were quite decent, especially now that he had started focusing on cultivating skill fruits. He made a point to mention that he had carefully sorted all the skill fruits into boxes clearly marked with skull emojis, emphasizing that Ayla absolutely must not eat any of them. Ayla, however, hadn't been aware of the dangers associated with consuming skill fruits. She had already used several of those fruits to prepare the stew they were currently eating. Light got up in a panic and asked if she was sure she put skill fruits in the stew, but she definitely did, and from what the Holy Sister said, eating a second skill fruit was a guaranteed death sentence. All of a sudden, he felt a pain in his chest, so he believed this was how he would die. He fell to the floor, and in his final breath, he apologized to Ayla because this was his fault for expecting her to understand the labels when she didn't know how to read yet. As he lay on the ground waiting for death to claim him, Light noticed that it was taking far longer than expected. Sitting up, he was stunned to find himself completely unharmed. Ayla noticed the bewildered look on Light's face and asked if he was okay. That was precisely the source of his confusion. Consuming a second skill fruit was supposed to be fatal, so how was he still alive? Just then, a sharp headache struck him, accompanied by the surge of a new skill's power flowing through his body. Ayla started to feel a sharp pain in her body as well, and since she ate the stew, that must mean she was about to acquire a skill too. All of a sudden, she was able to see words floating in front of Light. In addition, Light's skill made him immune to all nut poisons. Light is taken aback and questions Ayla about how she knows this. She explains that she can see words floating in the air, and Light quickly deduces that she must have gained some kind of appraisal skill. Ayla continues reading through Light's information and discovers that he now has a second skill. She informs him that the new ability is called Sword God. The Sword God skill significantly boosts Light's attack power whenever he wields a sword and also provides a substantial increase to his magic resistance. If what Ayla says is true, this could mean that Light's dream might finally become a reality. Light wants to test it out for himself. He runs outside with his sword and goes back into the forest to see if he really has a new sword skill. He raises his sword, and with a single swing, he slashes the tree stump in half, as well as the bigger tree behind it. It's safe to say that, as of this moment, Light is overpowered. The following day, Light heads into town with the goal of visiting the guild and finally becoming an adventurer. He's brimming with excitement, as this has always been a dream of his. The first thing that catches his eye is the notice board filled with bounty quests. If they can successfully complete one, they'll have enough money to buy better equipment and delicious food. However, earning money isn't the only reason Light came here today. He's determined to test just how effective his Sword God skill will be in combat. If things go well, he might finally achieve his goal of becoming an official adventurer. He tells Ayla to sit on a bench and wait for him while he gets a quest at the front desk. While he's gone, Ayla takes the opportunity to use her appraisal skill on all the people in the guild. She's amazed by all the different types of skills that exist, but she's also shocked by how useless some of them are, like this guy who has a self-damaging skill. At that moment, Ayla hears a commotion coming from the front desk. When she looks over, she sees Light caught up in a heated argument with one of the adventurers in the guild. The man recognizes Light as the guy who's always selling nuts in the market and mocks him, declaring that someone like him doesn't belong in the guild. Light, however, pays him no attention and simply turns to Ayla, saying they can leave now. The guy is offended that Light would dare to ignore him, so his completely normal reaction is to attack Light with his sword. Light's Sword God skill also improves his reflexes, so he is easily able to block the attack. The guy had no idea Light could do that, so he fully intended to catch a murder charge today. The guy's friends see that Light is capable of defending himself, so they convince him to just walk away because this isn't a fight he can win. Jean tries to play off his outburst and claims he never really intended to hurt Light, so he and his friends leave the guild to go on their first mission. Shortly after, Light and Ayla leave as well since Light has gotten the quest for them. They make their way to the rocky plains, and Light is filled with excitement at the thought thought of finally encountering a monster in real life. Knowing how dangerous the area is, he warns Ayla to stay close to him. Before long, they spot their target, a slime monster in the distance, and Light readies himself for battle. He moves cautiously, trying to sneak up on it, but the slime notices him regardless. Switching tactics, Light opts for a direct frontal attack. With his newfound strength, he charges at the slime, slicing it cleanly in half and unintentionally splitting the ground beneath it in the process. He's happy that his skill really is useful in battle, but he knows he's going to have to work on his power management so he doesn't cause any more collateral damage. Ayla congratulates Light on his first successful quest. They need to cut the slime up and bring the parts back to the guild so they can exchange it for money. Ayla says she feels kind of bad about cutting the slime's body up, but Light reminds her that they'll earn enough money for pizza if they sell the slime parts. Ayla throws her morals out the window and begins dissecting the slime. At that moment, they hear shouting coming from the other side of the plains. Rushing over, they find Jean and his party under attack by a massive ogre. The group had deliberately chosen an easy quest, planning to kill a slime and head home, but they never anticipated encountering an ogre. The orc swings its weapon at them, forcing everyone to leap out of the way. Even though they manage to avoid the initial strike, it's clear they have no chance of defeating such a formidable opponent. Light calls over to them to ask if they are all right, and as soon as Jean spots him, he comes up with a plan to escape. He and his friends start running straight at Light. Light is a bit confused by what they are doing, but then they run past him, and he realizes they are trying to use him as bait so they can flee. The ogre now intends to attack Light, so he has no choice but to fight it. In fact, this works out well for him since he needs to test the limits of his new skill. The ogre swings its mace toward him, and Light quickly jumps to the side to dodge the attack. However, his approach is dangerous, prompting Ayla to warn him that his sword god skill doesn't enhance his defense. If he takes even a single hit, it could be fatal. Despite the risk of death, Light remains determined not to back down. He's resolved to become the world's greatest adventurer, and if he's serious about achieving that dream, he knows he must conquer this challenge. He has finally gotten used to his body's new strength, so Light jumps into the air. As the ogre tries to strike him, he slashes its mace in half. No matter what it takes, he will make sure he catches up to Lena so the two of them can be together again. In one swift motion, he brings his sword down and cuts the ogre cleanly in half, all while Jean and his friends watch from a nearby hill. A short time later, Light heads back to the guild to trade his items for money. The receptionist, however, finds it difficult to believe that he managed to take down an ogre on his own. To prove it, Light presents the ogre horn he brought back, and to back him up, Jean's friends confirm that they witnessed the entire fight and can vouch for him. Convinced by their testimony, the receptionist accepts his story and asks him to wait a moment while she retrieves his reward. Meanwhile, Jean's friends thank Light once again for saving them. At that moment, a crowd begins to gather near the front of the guild, prompting Light to ask if something has happened. Jean explains that the S-rank party has just returned. This is the very same S-rank party that Lena joined, and it's the first time Light has seen her in the past 3 months. Light approaches her and tries to greet her. But to his shock, Lena responds by saying, "I've never met this man before in my life." Light is completely crushed and can't wrap his head around the fact that Lena forgot about him in just 3 months. He's left standing there, his mouth hanging open in shock. Ayla, clueless about what's bothering him, tries to lift his spirits and proposes they go out for some pizza. Light agrees and takes Ayla to grab pizza, but his gloomy demeanor persists. Frustrated, Ayla warns him that if he doesn't pull himself together soon, she'll eat all the pizza herself. Light spent a lot of money on this pizza, so even if he's upset about Lena, there's no way he's letting it go to waste. However, he eats so fast that he ends up choking. Luckily, someone hands him a glass of water to wash it down. He looks up to thank the helpful stranger, but to his surprise, the stranger turns out to be Lena. He's about to yell her name, but Lena covers his mouth and tells him to be quiet. Otherwise, Grouse is going to hear them. She sits down at the table, and Ayla introduces herself since this is the first time she's actually met Lena. Lena is just about to question how Light managed to have a kid in only 3 months, but before she gets the chance, Light interrupts to ask her what she's doing there. Honestly, Lena is asking herself the same thing about Light since she never thought she'd encounter him at the guild. Light, clearly proud, tells her that he and Ayla have become adventurers. He then goes on to share the story about the skill fruit incident, which allowed him to obtain a second skill. Lena appears genuinely happy for him, as this means he's finally on the path to achieving his dream. Light then asks Lena how her time with the S-rank party sacred has been so far, but from Lena's expression, it doesn't seem like it's been much fun. She's basically just being forced to fight with a bunch of random people that the Holy Sister selected. The pay is great, but the atmosphere is more toxic than a Call of Duty lobby, so she advises Light to stay away from Sacred if he wants to enjoy his time as an adventurer. Light still doesn't see what's so terrible about Sacred, especially since he's heard so many positive things about them. However, Lena recalls an incident from 2 months ago when their party faced off against a giant serpent. Knowing that serpents are weak to fire, Grouse instructed the mage to attack it with fire magic. The mage complied but went overboard, accidentally setting a nearby farm ablaze when Lena tried to bring it up, hoping they could do something to stop the fire. Grouse showed no concern at all about destroying a random farmer's land. In his eyes, their mission was to kill the serpent, and they had accomplished that. There was no reason to bother with pointless issues like collateral damage, as long as the main job was completed. She tried explaining the situation to the Holy Sister as well, but she cared about it even less than Grouse did. The Holy Sister doesn't care how much property is destroyed or how many peasants are killed as long as history remembers them as heroes. Lena doesn't tell Light about the twisted views of her party, but Light can tell that she's unhappy with them, so he invites her to join him and Ayla if she wants. However, as much as Lena would love that, there are circumstances that prevent her from quitting Sacred. She tells Light she's fine, but he can clearly see her crying, so he knows something must be wrong. However, Lena doesn't want to drag him into her mess, so she leaves the table. A short time later, Light heads to the front desk to claim his reward for defeating the ogre, and is handed 10,000 gold pieces, an amount of money far greater than anything he's ever seen before. Yet, he doesn't feel the slightest bit excited. His mind is consumed with worry about Lena, but he realizes he can't help her unless he figures out what Sacred is compelling her to do, and she refuses to tell him directly. With that in mind, Ayla suggests that he simply ask Grouse, the party leader, directly since the door to his lounge is conveniently wide open. Inside the lounge, Grouse is currently sitting with 2 ladies and telling them stories about his legendary battles. For instance, he tells them about his most recent battle, where he and his party were hunting an evil grizzly. To take care of it, they torched the bear with a massive inferno before Grouse delivered the finishing blow. Just then, the receptionist comes in because she has something to talk to Grouse about regarding his recent mission. The people from the village where he found that evil grizzly have lodged a complaint against him, saying that the fire attack that Sacred used caused their reservoir to dry up completely, so now they have no water. Grouse quickly brushes off the complaint, casually making up an excuse that a bit of collateral damage is unavoidable when handling such dangerous monsters. However, deep down, he secretly enjoys causing trouble for those he considers weak, believing they're beneath him. Light overhears the entire conversation and becomes furious because he knows Lena would never ignore the struggles of ordinary people like that. He confronts Grouse, demanding that he release Lena from Sacred since it's obvious she's in distress. But Grouse doesn't take him seriously at all and simply calls security to have Light escorted out of the lounge. Ayla rushes over to Light's side to ask if he's alright. Light is fine, but the other adventurers warn him that it's a bad idea to piss him off because he may be a jerk, but angering him will get you on the Holy Sister's bad side. And if she's got a grudge against you, then it's safe to say that your adventuring career is over. The following day, all the members of Sacred gather in the lounge, indulging in self-praise and reveling in their supposed greatness. Meanwhile, Lena reflects on what Light said about leaving Sacred if it was causing her so much pain. Summoning her courage, she finally speaks up, announcing to everyone that she wants to live as an adventurer guided by her moral code, which is why she's leaving Sacred immediately. As she begins to walk toward the exit, Grouse suddenly blocks her path, moving with alarming speed, and threatens to kill her for having the audacity to defy him. Lena is about to draw her sword to defend herself, but realizes that even with her sword saint's skill, it would still be impossible for her to defeat Grouse in one-on-one combat. So, she's forced to submit and takes her hand off her blade. Grouse then backhands her to the floor and begins a half-hearted speech about how she should persevere for the sake of all the people their party will save in the future. He tells her that she's going to have to keep persevering until the day she dies in battle. On that same day, the sacred party prepares to leave town, and Lena has resigned herself to a life of being forced to serve under Grouse. However, as they begin their departure, their path is suddenly blocked by Light. Grouse demands to know why Light is standing in their way, to which Light boldly declares that he's there to take back his friend. He turns to Lena, saying that he and Ayla were about to go hunt some monsters and would love for her to join them. After all, they made a promise to each other to become adventurers together, and he fully intends to keep that promise. Lena remembers the promise and would love to go with Light, but she doesn't have the strength to go against Grouse. She asks Light to just leave her alone before he gets hurt. Since Lena has rejected Light's offer, Grouse tries to get him to go away, but Light hasn't given up yet. Instead, he declares that he wants to have a duel with Grouse for Lena's freedom. Grouse initially rejects the duel since he has no reason to fight a random nobody, but then Light taunts him by asking if he is scared of losing to a nobody. Grouse couldn't let such public disrespect slide, so he ends up agreeing to Light's duel and plans to make an example out of him. Grouse, however, sets a condition: if Light loses, he will be permanently banned from the Adventurers Guild and will never be allowed to set foot in the city again. Light agrees to the terms without hesitation, but Lena pleads with him to reconsider. Fearing he has no chance of winning against Grouse in a sword fight, Grouse draws his sword, ready to strike, but before he makes a move, Ayla scans him and warns Light about his Godspeed skill. This ability enables Grouse to close the gap with his opponent almost instantly, so Light must stay on guard against it. Light readies his sword as well, but to keep things fair, he announces that his skills are Nut Master and Sword God. However, Grouse doesn't believe him since there's no way anyone could possibly have two skills. Grouse then closes the distance instantly to attack, and Light could barely see the attack coming, but he does manage to block it. Grouse then repeatedly strikes at Light, forcing him into a defensive position because he can't keep up with all of Grouse's attacks. Light manages to put some distance between them, but it doesn't last long. Grouse appears behind him in a flash and drives his knee into Light's side. No matter where they are on the battlefield, as long as Grouse is within range, he can teleport there instantly. For Light, there's no place that's truly safe. Acknowledging how incredibly strong Grouse is, Light still refuses to give up and charges forward to attack. Unfortunately, Grouse sidesteps just before the strike lands, and while Light is momentarily off balance, Grouse shatters his sword. With Light's weapon destroyed, the battle seems all but decided. However, Grouse is feeling generous today, so he tells Lena that he will spare Light if she swears her undying loyalty to him for the rest of her life. Light, however, tells Lena that she doesn't have to worry because he will find a way to win this match. Light may have been losing up till now, but Lena chooses to put her faith in him and trusts that he can win this battle no matter what. Grouse, sick of all this disrespect, plans to kill Light with his next attack. Light still doesn't have a sword, so he glances around for a substitute and decides to borrow a broom from one of the spectators. Grouse assumes Light is mocking him, and he's not entirely wrong after all. Light could have easily borrowed Lena's sword instead. Despite this, Light is fully confident that he can defeat Grouse with just the broomstick. He begins to visualize it as a real sword and focuses on preparing for Grouse's attacks. Up until now, he's been falling behind because he's been fixated on watching Grouse's movements. However, with his Sword God skill granting him exceptional reflexes, this time, Light decides to trust his instincts and strike when the moment feels right. Thanks to Light's changing strategy, his body is able to react the second Grouse gets within range. He uses the broom to smack Grouse's face so hard that he gets sent flying into a brick wall. Grouse is out cold, so Light is officially the winner of their duel. Just to make the point clear, Light turns to the other members of Sacred and tells them that if they come after Lena again, then they will have to deal with him. He then turns to Lena and tells her that she's finally free. Once again, he invites her to join his party, and Lena happily accepts. A week has gone by since Light's duel with Grouse, and not much has changed since then. He's still tending to his nuts, but now he has Lena by his side, which has made him much happier. Lena has prepared lunch for everyone, and as they eat, she asks Light about the injuries he sustained during his fight with Grouse. Light reassures her that he's feeling great now and is ready to finally join Lena on a mission. Normally, this would be his dream come true, but there's still one lingering problem. Every so often, Lena gets a visitor sent by the Holy Sister. For the past week, this visitor has been trying to get Lena to meet with the Holy Sister to discuss her decision to leave Sacred. However, Lena says there's nothing to discuss because there's nothing that can make her change her mind. Unfortunately, since they've earned the scorn of the Holy Sister, they are now being targeted. As a result, when they go to the guild to pick out a quest, they're only offered the worst jobs available, like killing sewer rats. These jobs don't pay much, so managing their finances is going to be a challenge. However, Lena doesn't seem bothered by it, as she genuinely enjoys being able to help people. She finds fulfillment in tasks like rebuilding destroyed homes, clearing out the sewers, or locating a missing cat. By the end of the day, they've only earned 100 coins, barely enough to afford 3 pizzas. Even so, Lena feels much happier now that she's making a real difference in people's lives, and Light is having more fun than he ever has before. Meanwhile, at the Holy Sisters Cathedral, she informs her assistant that she plans to assign Lena's new party a real job soon. However, this task is S rank, one of the most challenging missions possible. It's unclear whether or not she's secretly hoping that Light doesn't survive the ordeal. The following day, Light and the group set out for the Montes Valley to tackle their latest quest. However, the fog is so dense that Light can barely figure out which direction they're heading. He turns to Lena to confirm if they've reached the correct location, and she reassures him by consulting the map, saying they should be nearing the mansion. Just then, Light's horse suddenly rears up, almost throwing him off as they come upon the mansion, and it's clear that the horse won't be able to make it all the way down there. 3 hours earlier that day, as Light and his group were making their way into the guild to select their next quest, they found the receptionist already waiting for them with a special assignment. She was relieved to see Lena's party and urged them to take on the quest, emphasizing the need for it to be resolved quickly to ensure everyone's safety. However, there was little information available about the situation, and she admitted she had no idea what might be causing it. The trouble began when an adventuring party traveling to the northern Montes Valley vanished during their quest, and every time they sent other adventurers to investigate, they also mysteriously disappeared. What's even more alarming is that both A and B rank adventurers have vanished in that valley, meaning that whatever is behind these disappearances must be extremely powerful. The receptionist gives the group a list of the missing adventurers, and to Lena's shock, she recognizes them. They were the very people who taught her everything she knows about adventuring back when she was just starting out, which makes her deeply concerned for their well-being. The only lead they have is that all the missing adventurers were last seen visiting the residence of the former Count of Montes. Count Montes was a legendary adventurer who amassed great wealth before retiring in the region. While there's no record of what abilities the Count might have had, he passed away over 30 years ago, leaving his mansion to crumble into ruin. Anyway, the mission for Lena's party is to find the missing adventurers as well as determine the cause of all the disappearances. Lena is hesitant to agree to this job since even A and B rank adventurers went missing without a trace. But on the other hand, Light seems really excited because he has always wanted to visit the Montes Valley. Plus, this job will actually earn them a decent reward. So even Ayla is on board since it means more pizza for her. The receptionist is just now noticing that Ayla is here, so she asks Light if he really intends to take her along with him on the quest. Light tells the receptionist that Ayla is a very dependable appraiser, so it's essential for her to accompany him on quests. But that statement raises even more questions since kids as young as Ayla shouldn't have skills yet. Light explains that she accidentally ate a skill fruit a while ago, but she didn't die or anything, so everything's fine. With that, the group begins their journey toward the Montes Valley, and now we return to the present. The group is carefully making their way along the side of the mountain, with a steep drop below them. Light reminds Ayla to be extra cautious as he takes in the massive mansion ahead. Light finds it hard to believe that someone could amass enough wealth from adventuring alone to afford such a place. However, Lena doesn't think it's too surprising after all. She's only been an adventurer for a few months, and she's already saved enough to buy a house. Light had thought about it before, but now he's even more inspired to build a grand home like this one, where he can grow his fruits and train to his heart's content. Ayla gets caught up in the excitement, exclaiming that she wants to build a candy house for herself. Unfortunately, her enthusiasm seems to cloud her judgment, as she starts jumping for joy right on the ledge. As soon as she lands, the ledge collapses beneath her feet, sending her plummeting toward her doom. However, with his quick reflexes, Light manages to grab her hand just in time, only to lose his own balance and tumble over the edge with her. Lena tries to pull them back to safety, but she gets dragged down as well, and the entire group ends up falling. As they plummet, Light realizes he needs to act fast to avoid a disastrous landing. Thinking quickly, he draws his sword and uses it to slash through the air, generating enough wind pressure to slow their descent. Thanks to this maneuver, they all manage to land safely in one piece. However, just because they survived the fall doesn't mean they are safe, since Lena and Ayla soon realize that they've been surrounded. Light doesn't seem too bothered since he's sure he can handle whatever kind of monsters these are, so he charges forward and slashes one of the monsters in half. Light was right about the monsters being easy to defeat, but Lena and Ayla realize that these are no ordinary monsters. Now that they mention it, Light pauses for a moment to take a proper look at the monsters, and to his horror, he realizes that they are all adventurers. Ayla uses her appraisal skill on the adventurers and informs the group that they've all been turned into undead after being bitten. She also points out that these undead adventurers retain the same skills they had when they were alive, so she warns Light and Lena to exercise extreme caution while facing them. Meanwhile, Light is in the middle of a major moral dilemma because he can't come to terms with the fact that the monster he was so excited to slay used to be human just like him. He gets so distracted that he nearly gets bitten by one of the undead. But before that could happen, Lena steps in and slices it in half. She can understand why Light would be hesitant about fighting the undead, but at the same time, it is their duty as adventurers to put their former comrades to rest. Light understands what she's saying, so he agrees to fight. But for now, they have to retreat into the mansion since there's a chance that there might be survivors in there. Unfortunately, when they open the front door, they discover even more undead adventurers waiting inside. Lena immediately takes the lead, rushing forward to carve a path, cutting through several of the undead with precision. Light is impressed by Lena's deep knowledge of monsters, as she adapts her attack strategies based on her opponents. She knows that undead creatures still resembling humans can be defeated by stabbing through the heart, while skeletal ones require their spines to be severed. Such precise attacks take incredible skill, and even though Light's sword god skill is technically more powerful than Lena's sword saint skill, she still surpasses him in actual combat ability. However, just because he's not as skilled doesn't mean he's going to stand back and let her handle everything alone. Determined to contribute, Light draws his sword and charges at the undead. Light begins cutting through the undead monsters as well, but while he's doing well against them, he completely forgets that Ayla has no fighting skills. Stepping away leaves her vulnerable to attack. An undead sneaks up behind her and is about to strike, but just before she could be hit, Lena dashes forward and stabs the undead through the guts in its armor, killing it in one blow. Once the undead disintegrates, Lena asks Ayla if she's okay, and Ayla begins praising her for being so cool. Lena feels really flattered, but she can't let herself become too overconfident. That little slip-up Light made could have easily cost Ayla her life, so he swears that from now on, he will fight with a clear head and won't hesitate anymore so they can all make it out of this alive. With all the undead on this floor taken care of, Lena suggests they move on to the second floor. However, before proceeding, Light brings up something that has been bothering him. They were sent on this mission because 18 adventurers had gone missing here, but even if those adventurers were turned into undead, he and Lena have already defeated far more than 18 undead so far. The only possible explanation is that there were already a large number of undead monsters in this mansion beforehand, but that doesn't add up either. There's no reason for undead to just randomly spawn here. As they head up the staircase, Light notices the painting of Count Monty's, and there's something unsettling about it. But even more unsettling is the fact that there's a girl dancing somewhere in the castle, and she's looking forward to all the fun ways she could kill Light. As the three of them run down the hallway, they are suddenly jump-scared by an undead that lunges at them. But before it could infect anyone, Light manages to chop its head off. They may have taken care of that first one, but there are a lot more where that came from. So Light and Lena have a lot of work ahead of them. The undead on this floor appear to be using strategy, as evidenced by the ambush they set up. Light asks Ayla to scan them and see if she can uncover any useful information. Following his instructions, Ayla discovers that these undead have been tamed and are being controlled by someone giving them orders. At that moment, Light notices several threads connected to the undead, and after scanning those as well, Ayla realizes that the threads are transmitting magic power to them. This means that whoever is orchestrating this must be at the other end of those threads. After following them for a while, they come across a door where all the threads converge. Light tells everyone to be prepared since they don't know what kind of danger they may face once they head inside. But as he opens the door, all he finds is an empty ballroom. All of a sudden, the girl behind this whole thing appears. While Light was initially glad to finally see a living person, he can tell that she doesn't seem very friendly. Ayla uses her appraisal skill on her and discovers that Draitna's skill is necromancy, meaning she can control the dead and even use their unique skills as her own. Having her skill appraised so nonchalantly was deeply irritating to Draitna, and she considers taking Ayla out first out of sheer annoyance. Before she can make a move, Light steps in and asks if Draitna was sent here on a mission from the guild, suggesting that if that's the case, there's no reason for them to fight. However, the girl denies it outright, stating that her sole reason for being here is to kill Light. Light doesn't understand why she would be here specifically to kill him because he has never met her before, but Draitna doesn't have a personal grudge against him or anything. She was just given an order to kill him, so that's what she's going to do. Light asks her who gave the order, and it may or may not have been a certain holy sister, but Draitna isn't going to confirm anything. Regardless, if Draitna's goal has always been to kill Light, she must have come here and killed all those adventurers just to lure him out. Lena also finds it strange that she has never once heard of a skill as powerful as necromancy, but she doesn't have much time to think about it because Draitna is beginning her attack. If Light and Lena work together, it's not that hard to deal with the undead, but Draitna has no interest in Lena. Instead, she lures Lena away from Light and sets her up to fight the undead versions of her mentors, Bork and Shira. Lena is horrified to learn that they actually died here, so she is stunned by grief for a moment, but Ayla yells over to warn her that these two are a lot more dangerous than the others. They still have full control over their skills, so Bork can grow claws to increase his attack speed and power, while Shira can create a mirror image of herself to attack multiple times. Lena is struggling to keep up with the undead's powerful skills, but thanks to Ayla's timely warnings, she manages to defend herself. Meanwhile, Draitna grows increasingly annoyed with the support Ayla is providing and decides to eliminate her first. She sends an undead to attack Ayla, but this time, Light is ready. Just before Ayla can be harmed, Light rushes in and grabs her, vowing to protect her no matter what. However, fighting while ensuring Ayla's safety proves to be a daunting task. Draitna continues to send undead after Light, and the moment he shifts his focus, she seizes every opportunity to target Ayla directly. Light finds himself barely able to keep up with the relentless onslaught. Meanwhile, Lena is still struggling to come to terms with the fact that she has to kill her mentors. When she was first brought to the holy city, these two were the first people to show her kindness, so she owes them a great deal. Yet now, she finds herself fighting for her life against them. As much as she doesn't want to do it, she knows that she needs to kill them so she can go help Light and Ayla, so she cuts the threads above them to release Draitna's control and prepares her sword to finish the two off. As she does this, she sees a vision of their souls, and they tell her that she doesn't have to feel guilty about finishing them off because it's the right thing to do. With a heavy heart, Lena raises her sword and cuts the two in half. Meanwhile, Light continues to struggle to protect both himself and Ayla, as the undead seem endless no matter how many he defeats. Suddenly, he realizes something doesn't add up. There's no way Draytna could have an infinite supply of undead at her disposal. To investigate, he asks Ayla to determine whether Draytna has the ability to create undead. According to Ayla's appraisal, Draytna lacks that power and can only control undead that already exist. With this revelation, Light urges Ayla to examine the situation more closely, convinced that there must be a hidden secret behind the seemingly endless army of undead. Draytna is impressed that Light managed to deduce she's hiding a trick, but she's determined not to let Ayla uncover what it is. She immediately sets her sights on eliminating Ayla. Light, however, refuses to let that happen and quickly destroys the undead attacking her. Realizing that Draytna is now targeting Ayla directly, he knows he can't leave her side for even a moment. Thinking quickly, he comes up with a solution. He places Ayla on his back so he can fight at full strength while keeping her safe. While Ayla clings to his back, Light inquires whether she can deduce the reason behind the constant appearance of the undead. However, with the zombies constantly shifting and moving, her skill struggles to lock on to anything specific. To provide her with a wider perspective on the situation, Light leaps into the air and grabs hold of a chandelier. From this vantage point, Ayla begins scanning all the zombies for any signs of unusual activity. Meanwhile, Light's arm is throbbing in pain, prompting him to urge Ayla to speed things up. Before long, Ayla identifies the source of the undead swarm and informs Light that one of the zombies in the back possesses a summoning skill. And this isn't just any ordinary zombie, it's none other than Count Montes himself. Draytna is none too pleased about how close they're getting to uncovering her secret, so she attempts to eliminate them. While Light remains suspended from the roof, she summons a Soul Reaper to go after them. After scanning it, Ayla warns Light that even a single touch from the scythe will turn him into an undead, making it critical to avoid being hit. To dodge the attack, Light is forced to leap down. At least now they finally understand why there were so many zombies in the area. The Soul Reaper was responsible for turning those adventurers into undead. Draytna praises them for piecing it together, but clarifies that the Soul Reaper originally belonged to Count Montes. There's an ironic twist to it. Such a great hero ended up falling victim to his own Soul Reaper. Afterward, any adventurers who came to the mansion to investigate would also be turned into undead. While this explains how everything unfolded, Light is still baffled as to why Count Montes would summon a creature like the Soul Reaper in the first place. The fact that Light can't even begin to understand why infuriates Draytna, prompting her to call him a naive child. When he asks what she means by that, Draytna counters with a question of her own: does he know anything about taboo skills? These are abilities so feared that merely having one earns the scorn of society, and Count Montes' summoning skill was one of them. Initially, people celebrated him as a hero with an extraordinary ability, but his skill proved to be far too overpowered, sparking fear among the public and the government. They grew concerned that he might eventually embark on a villain arc, so they ostracized him and even falsely accused him of treason. Ironically, that's the exact thing that drove him to his villain arc. The government kept sending assassins after him day in and day out. So one day, he decided, if I'm dying, then we're dying, and summoned his secret treasure. Light had no idea that the guild would do something as shady as sending assassins after Count Montes, but that's enough chit-chat for now because Draytna wants to get on with their fight. This place was practically a dream for her since she could never find this many undead anywhere else. And if she uses her necromancy skill to control a summon user, she can endlessly summon as many dead as she wants. Light prepares his sword to face Draytna once more, but as he does, her words about the people fearing Count Montes' powerful skill linger in his mind. He realizes the same thing could easily happen to him, given that his Fruitmaster skill has the potential to let him acquire an unlimited number of abilities if he chose to. If others were to discover this, they would undoubtedly start treating him like a villain too. The thought of such an outcome weighs on him, but he doesn't have the luxury of dwelling on it. Right now, the priority is protecting Ayla and continuing the fight. To that end, Light managed to observe something while he was watching Draytna's undead. It looks like Draytna uses her necromancy to assign targets and attack methods to the undead. Ayla confirms this since undead under Draytna's control are only capable of using the same attacks over and over until they are given new instructions. Light comes up with a plan to take advantage of this, so as Dratna sends undead after him, he prepares a counterattack. However, that was just a diversion. He cancels the attack mid-animation and jumps into the air to give Lena an opening to attack. Dratna is taken by surprise by the sudden turn of events and attempts to redirect the Soul Reaper to target Lena instead. However, she's too late before she can even issue the command. Lena has already cut through the undead in a single strike. With the Soul Reaper now out of the picture, the only task remaining is for Light to deal with Count Montes, ensuring Dratna can't use him to summon any more undead. Dratna is starting to get desperate since she's on the verge of losing. Just before Montes's body vanishes, she uses her skill to force him to summon the ultimate monster. This can't be good, so Light and Lena brace themselves for whatever is coming their way. To their horror, a wicked dragon is spawned. Dratna is overjoyed that the summon spell actually worked, but she failed to realize that the dragon isn't undead, so she has no control over it and gets tail whipped away. Lena can hardly believe her eyes as she stands face to face with a wicked dragon, a creature so powerful that even S-rank parties avoid hunting it. Light, however, confidently suggests that they should be able to defeat it if they combine their efforts. Ayla quickly shuts down that plan, pointing out that the dragon is entirely immune to slashing attacks. Despite the clear warning from someone with the appraisal skill, Light remains convinced that his sword god skill will give him an edge. Without hesitation, he leaps into the air and attempts to slash the dragon. However, his sword ends up shattering as a result, and he nearly gets hit with a face full of dragon's breath. When he lands, Ayla yells at him for not listening to her. There aren't many options left, and the second they turn their backs to the dragon, they are bound to get attacked. Lena is starting to think about sacrificing herself to make sure Light and Ayla can get out of this alive. But luckily, Ayla has a better plan in mind. She pulls out a skill fruit and tells Light to eat it. While there's no guarantee that a skill fruit will help here, it's their best option. Meanwhile, despite being severely injured by the dragon, Dratna feels content with how things have turned out, convinced that there's no way Light can possibly survive against such a beast. Shortly after, she loses consciousness, and a man appears, picks up her body, and teleports away. Returning to Light and the others, Lena questions Ayla about why she's carrying a skill fruit, to which Ayla responds that she thought it might be useful. Given the danger posed by the wicked dragon, their only chance of victory lies in Light gaining a new skill. Lena is shocked that Light is seriously considering eating another skill fruit, but he assures her it's fine since he's immune to the poison. Despite this, Lena argues it's still a gamble. They have no way of knowing what kind of skill he'll acquire. For all they know, it could be a skill that interferes with his sword god skill. Even so, doing nothing isn't an option if they want to survive. Light takes a bite of the skill fruit, and his body begins burning up as he acquires a new skill and falls to the floor. The dragon starts attacking, so Lena is forced to defend Light until he gets back on his feet. Eventually, the side effects of the skill fruit wear off, so Light asks Ayla to appraise him. As she does, she informs him that his new skill is something called bug resistance. Light is disappointed and asks if his skill classifies the wicked dragon as a bug. But no bug resistance only works on actual bugs. Lena continues doing her best to hold off the dragon, but it's clear she won't be able to keep it up for much longer. Light turns to Ayla and asks her to hand him 2 skill fruits at once. Ayla hesitates, warning him that eating 2 at the same time could have unpredictable effects on his body. However, Light insists that it's a risk he has to take to increase his chances of gaining a useful skill. He bites into both skill fruits, but much to his disappointment. The first skill he acquires is called Cat Charmer. It only makes cats like him. The second is Weapon Durability Boost, which is completely useless to him now since his sword is already broken. On top of not getting any useful skills, eating 2 skill fruits at once has adverse effects on his body. If he doesn't get a good skill on the next attempt, he's not going to be able to move anymore. At this point, Lena is starting to wear herself out, and as As she goes to attack the dragon again, her sword shatters and the dragon whips her into a wall. She's pretty much down for the count now. Seeing Lena in trouble, Light takes another bite of a skill fruit, hoping this time it grants him something useful. Fortunately, the skill he gains seems promising. As the dragon closes in on Lena, Light hurls a rock at its face to divert its attention. With the dragon now focused on him, Light readies himself to face it using his newly acquired skill. Curious, Lena asks Ayla what skill Light just gained, and Ayla explains that it's called Sleep Pixie. This skill allows Light to summon a cute pixie, and anything that inhales the pixie's dust will fall asleep. Light activates the Sleep Pixie and sends it at the dragon. While the dust is effective, the dragon is really fighting to stay awake. At this distance, the dosage of pixie dust isn't strong enough to force the dragon to fall asleep. According to Ayla, Light's pixie can only fly up 3 meters away from him, so he needs to find a way to get close to the dragon's face. He comes up with an idea and picks up his broken sword so he can activate his sword god skill. Light hurls the blade at the ceiling, causing the roof to collapse. As the debris crashes to the ground, he uses the falling rubble as stepping stones to reach the dragon's face. Once there, he unleashes the pixie dust again, and this time, the dragon is knocked out cold. With the dragon incapacitated and unable to attack, Light urges them to move quickly and escape. As the building is on the verge of collapsing, they manage to get outside just in time, moments before the mansion crumbles to the ground behind them. Now that they are safe, Lena asks Light if he's alright after eating all those skill fruits. Light tells her he's fine since he doesn't want Lena to worry about him, but he is clearly out of breath, so something is definitely wrong. The group rides back to town on their horses, and Light is fighting just to stay conscious. By the time they finally reach the city gates, Light's body gives out, and he collapses to the floor. Meanwhile, the cloaked man returns Dratna to the Holy Sister and prepares to leave. Before he departs, the Holy Sister stops him and asks for his thoughts on Light after observing him. The man admits that Light is far stronger than he initially expected, particularly since he was able to defeat a dragon. However, the man reassures her that he doesn't believe Light poses any real threat to her plan. The Holy Sister hadn't anticipated that Light would be this powerful, as the strength he's displayed is comparable to that of the a priori. There's clearly something unique about him, but regardless of what it is, she already has significant plans for him in the coming future. After the exhausting expedition, Ayla finally found a moment to care for the garden, while Lena took a much-needed shower. Later on, the two teamed up to prepare lunch, and Lena momentarily forgot about watering the plants only for Ayla to remind her that she had already taken care of it. Feeling proud, Lena remarked that her friend was doing just fine without Light, and added that she was certain he would be proud as well. As the image of the cherished master of fruits emerged in the sky, Light suddenly appeared, proving he hadn't perished after all. Without hesitation, the girls pulled him back to bed, where he still needed to rest, despite having already slept for 2 full days. While settling him in, Lena realized that his fever had gone down, but that didn't mean they could afford to lower their guard just yet. That's why she had brought him lunch, which included dodo breast, vegetable soup, and lemonade sweetened with honey. On that note, she mentioned that the group had received a mandatory summons from the Adventurers Guild to provide more details about the emergence of the evil dragon. Light wanted to go along, but Ayla firmly insisted that he still needed to rest. When they arrived at the guild, Lena was told they would be escorted to the conference room in 2 hours. Annoyed by the long wait despite being summoned, she voiced her frustration, but the receptionist explained that the officials were occupied. On top of that, she also pointed out that Ayla wouldn't be allowed into the conference room since she hadn't officially registered as an adventurer yet. Lena immediately asked to register Ayla on the spot, prompting the clerk to hand her a form to fill out. Meanwhile, the adventurers nearby cast judgmental glances at Ayla, seeing her as just a child signing up at the guild. This made her question whether she truly belonged there, especially since, unlike the others, she didn't have any impressive gear. Lena pointed out that Ayla had an impressive skill assessment, though she understood that for kids, looking cool often seemed more important than having a practical ability. Keeping that in mind, she suggested they go shopping since they had time to kill anyway. Ayla hesitated, saying she didn't have the money for it, but Lena reassured her not to worry, reminding her that she was like a little sister to her and insisting on buying the equipment herself. Meanwhile, Light was at home, dying of boredom. Back to the girls, they bought ice cream on the way, and Ayla was excited that they were going shopping together. Seeing so many stores on the street, Ayla was amazed and ran to check out one called Ultra Luxury Shop. Honestly, Lena thought the store looked like it only sold knockoffs, but Ayla didn't care and ran inside. As they browsed, Lena insisted they should visit a less dubious shop, but Ayla, using her skill to evaluate an item on display, identified it as a rough diamond. The shopkeeper, however, challenged her assertion, arguing that it couldn't possibly be a rough diamond since no one would be interested in purchasing one. Yet, before he could finish his argument, Lena stepped in, offering several gold coins and promptly purchasing the piece. Outside, she crafted a necklace for her friend using the diamond as a pendant. After that, the two went to the tailor shop Rainbow Gown, where the shopkeeper offered them to try her latest works. Lena made it clear she was only looking for clothes for Ayla, but ended up being dragged into the fitting room and practically coerced into trying on the suggested outfits. Before long, she emerged wearing the most elegant and exotic dresses, some of which were a bit over the top for her age. Growing tired of the endless try-ons, Lena dropped to her knees and shouted that she was there to buy something for Ayla. Finally grasping what the customer meant, the shop owner presented a cat-eared outfit for the child. Ayla admitted she was looking for something else, so Lena encouraged her friend to speak up about what she wanted, loudly and clearly, as that would build confidence. After all, the girl was an essential part of their group and needed to act like it. Feeling more confident, Ayla told the shopkeeper she wanted to be like Lena and wear cool clothes that made her look like a real adventurer. Later, the two returned to the guild and were called into the conference room. This time, Ayla was dressed in her new outfit and felt much better about it. Meanwhile, Light was doing push-ups to keep boredom at bay. The pixie slapped him, insisting he should return to bed. In response, Light explained that he had already been doing nothing but sleeping for 2 straight days. Despite his protests, the pixie dragged Light back to bed and made sure he stayed put. Unconvinced, he pondered that, at this moment, his friends were likely receiving high praise for defeating the evil dragon, while he had to endure lectures from 3-centimeter pixies. Still, the young man didn't give up and decided to go to the guild. Back at the guild, Lena and Ayla were escorted to the meeting room, with the receptionist stressing how crucial Lena's participation was. Lena, eager to help, expressed her willingness to cooperate. However, at the same time, she quietly resolved that she had no intention of simply handing over all her information and walking away, especially since she had accepted the invitation to uncover the origin of Drytna, as someone had sent her to kill Lena and her friends. Moreover, only the Adventurers Guild knew that the group was heading to the Monty Count's mansion, meaning it was possible that the superiors were involved. For this reason, it was worth tossing out the words Drytna and Black Swan to see how these people would react. Before long, Lena and Ayla arrived at the conference room, where the members of the 4 bureaus were already gathered, awaiting Lena's arrival. Upon overhearing a man refer to these individuals, Ayla curiously asked what the 4 bureaus were. The receptionist clarified that the 4 bureaus represented the main departments of the guild. For instance, as the core of the Holy City, the guild comprised the bureaus of inspection, finance, security, and investigation, and the leaders of each department were present at this meeting. In other words, the most powerful figures within the organization were right there in the room. Flower Hat is the head of investigation, responsible for monster ecology and density research. Tigerbeard is the head of security, in charge of maintaining public order. The Gravekeeper is the chief financial officer, responsible for handling rewards and all money-related matters. The final member on the list is the individual responsible for upholding order across the entire guild, the chief inspector, known as the Holy Sister. The sister emphasizes that Lena did a fantastic job at the old mansion of Count Monty's and is glad the adventurer is well. Honestly, Lena would prefer not to see this woman again, but she is keen to see how she reacts. Ayla asks the receptionist about the Holy Sister, who explains that she oversees the inspection bureau and stands above the other departments, making her the most influential influential figure in the guild. Curious, Ayla wonders what kind of ability someone of such high prestige might have, but the answer only leaves her perplexed. During this, the sister asks Lena about the wicked dragon, but Lena would like to ask something first. In the mansion they were hired to investigate, the group was attacked by a woman who introduced herself as Lena of the Black Swan, and Lena wants to know if anyone present knows anything about this woman. The Holy Sister expresses her regret over not having any knowledge of the situation. Tiger Beard, on the other hand, is eager to face the individuals capable of summoning such a dragon. Flower Hat plans to investigate the matter further at the Great Library. Meanwhile, Gravekeeper reminds everyone that accessing personal records requires their explicit authorization. Regardless, the sister stresses that the most important thing now is to find out where the dragon has gone, as urgent action is required regarding this chaos. Lena is irritated to see that the sister dodged the question while the Holy Sister orders Flower Hat to report her progress. In response, Flower Hat informs them that she had dispatched a reconnaissance bird, but no trace of the dragon was found at the Montes Count's mansion. She adds that if they had a piece of the dragon's body, they could track its mana. Upon hearing this, Lena reveals a scale from the creature, leaving everyone stunned. However, before handing it over, she sets a condition: she must be granted access to all records concerning Lena. The four bureaus agree to Lena's terms, though the Holy Sister cautions that she might not find the answers she's seeking. Nevertheless, the deal is struck, and Flower Hat activates her ability, Scholar's Eye, which enables her to read anything written on paper. Using this skill, the investigator accesses the records Lena requested and uncovers that, 12 years ago, in the lake capital of Athena, a girl named Lena Bellberry received a skill fruit that granted her the power of necromancy. The record revealed that the Holy Sister had served as the evaluation officer on that particular day. With this information, Lena accuses the sister of dishonesty, as she had claimed not to know Lena. The Holy Sister defends herself, explaining that she grants abilities to around 1,000 people each year, making it impossible to remember one individual from 12 years ago. With that response, Lena knows she can't press the woman any further, but at least she has a clue. Then the sister stands to leave and thanks Lena for her help, but makes it clear that from today onwards, all records of Lena's group will be erased. Lena and Ayla are stunned and immediately ask why. The chief explains that the leader of the Sacred, Grouse, had accused Lena's of using violence against him and stealing his equipment. This revelation sets off a wave of chatter in the conference room, with everyone openly criticizing Light's behavior. But in that moment, Light himself arrives at the room with the most carefree face, eager to receive his deserved praises. However, upon noticing the tense atmosphere, he asks what's going on. Then, the Holy Sister explains that their group's records will be erased for violating guild rules. Light casually responds he does not about it, reasoning that whether registered or not, the three of them still make up the same group and will carry on as such. However, not entirely convinced, the Holy Sister's eyes begin to glow, projecting an image of space within her mind as she focuses on Light, and she is suddenly taken aback by some unexpected information. Because of this, she decides to change her mind and gives their group a chance to redeem themselves with a Rankus monster hunt. If they manage to complete the mission, they will keep their records and receive a hefty reward. Lena asks what happened for the Holy Sister to change her mind so quickly, and she responds that Light's determination touched her heart. Suspecting her intention, Lena asks Light to think carefully, but the guy is only eyeing the big payout and accepts immediately. After all, even if it turns out to be a trap, he won't be able to leave his mark on history without facing such a challenge. Following the meeting, a guild employee distributes pamphlets containing the mission details. However, Lena remains convinced that the Holy Sister is scheming against them, emphasizing the importance of staying vigilant and never letting their guard down. At that moment, Ayla shares that she tried to evaluate the sister's ability but saw nothing, which has never happened before. Next, noticing Light with a sword strapped to his back, Gravekeeper approaches to inform him that weapons are prohibited in the conference room and that he will be fined 1,000 gold coins for violating the rule. Light counters by explaining that the sword is broken, so it doesn't even count as a weapon. In response, the chief financial officer imposes a fine of 5,000 gold to compensate for the guild's sword that Light had broken. Furthermore, when Light checks a section to see his options, he learns that he is now banned from borrowing any more swords, having already broken 2. Despite the mishap, the young man views this as an opportunity to fulfill his dream of owning his own sword. The receptionist suggests having one custom made, explaining that a unique weapon tailored to the wielder's characteristics is far more effective. Inspired by this, Light leaves the guild determined to place an order for his custom sword right away, since it might take a few days for the weapon to be completed. Lena suggests using the time to visit Athena and follow up on the clue she has about Dratna. With the plan set, the rest of the group agrees, and they part ways after a shared farewell. A while later, in the tradesman's district, Light was voicing his complaints inside a shop he had heard was known for having a quality workshop. The clerk informed him that most workshops in this area were affiliated with the Holy Sister, meaning that few would be willing to assist them. Still, Light asked for help, eager to get his hands on a sword. In response, the man suggested he try his luck at Bolst's workshop on the west side. This particular workshop carried the name of the skilled smith who ran it, though Bolst had been dealing with some difficulties. Undeterred, Light grew excited and asked the clerk to write him a letter of introduction. Meanwhile, Lena sat inside a carriage, keeping her hood up to avoid attracting attention, all the while wondering if her companions were doing all right. Over on the west side of the tradesman's district, Light was delighted by the way everything was crafted there, while Ayla was equally excited at the thought of seeing a sword forged by a legendary smith. Suddenly, they were caught off guard by a girl who darted between them, fleeing from a group of men. Trapped in a dead-end alley, she was cornered by her pursuers and attacked, but just in time, Light arrived to stop them from harming her. One of the men, frustrated by the interference, swung his mace, nearly striking the intruding boy. Having narrowly avoided danger, Light instructed the frightened girl to stay behind him. Though she appeared worried, he reassured her that the sword god could handle these 3 without any trouble. With that, Light unsheathed his broken sword and struck the first adversary in the stomach with the pommel. Seeing their comrade collapse, his panicked companions quickly picked him up and carried him away, bringing the fight to an end. Grateful for the rescue, the girl introduced herself as Monica, and upon learning their names, she immediately embraced Ayla like a teddy bear because, in her opinion, nothing was more captivating than an adorable little girl. As a token of appreciation, Monica then invited them both to enjoy some tea and pancakes. Although Ayla was eager to dig in, Light chose to turn down the invitation for now, as they were on their way to Bolst's workshop. Taken aback, Monica revealed that the workshop belonged to her, though the playful smile on her face suggested there was more to the story. Regardless, she offered to take the adventurers there and led the way. After a while, the group arrived at the destination. Inside, Light noticed that the workshop was empty and asked where the other smiths were. Monica explained that she ran the place and took care of all the forges by herself, meaning they were actually standing in Monica's workshop. As a token of gratitude for being rescued, Monica was excited to present her finest creation. Without delay, she unveiled a highly efficient frying pan shaped like a pancake. Additionally, the mold was interchangeable, allowing it to be swapped out for different designs. She proudly introduced this invention as the Monica pan. For the reasonable price of 2,000 gold coins, this incredible set could be yours. However, since Monica considered herself a generous person, she was willing to offer it at half the price. Concerning this, Light thought the frying pan was too expensive. Plus, when the pancake goes into the belly, the shape is always the same. Frustrated, Monica admitted that no one wanted to buy her innovative product. By the way, she had tried to sell it to those guys, but they thought it was a scam and attacked her. On that note, Monica mentioned that she had been focusing more on crafting household tools rather than weapons. Light's attention was drawn to a hoe blade sitting on the counter, as he explained that he grows fruit and harvesting it is quite a laborious task. Sensing an opportunity, Monica asked to examine the adventurer's hand, and after taking a good look at its shape, she immediately set to work on crafting something. Working at the forge with a morsite or ingot, Monica caught Ayla's attention, who was amazed by Monica's super forge skill, a technique that allowed the user to assign desired properties to a blade with each hammer strike. Next, Monica bent the heated part, turned it into a sharp blade, blade and added her signature as the final touch. In no time, Monica had crafted a custom-made harvesting scissor for the farmer. To put it to the test, she handed Light a log, though he was skeptical that such a small scissor could slice through something so tough. However, the moment he closed the blades, the log split cleanly in half, leaving him completely stunned by the unparalleled efficiency of his newest tool. Pleased that Light was impressed with her creation, Monica was about to name her price when Light suddenly cut her off, requesting that she forge a sword for him instead. After all, the entire reason he had come was to seek out her renowned skills to craft the best sword possible. However, lowering her head, Monica explained that it wasn't an option, not because her workshop was aligned with the Holy Sister, but for a different reason entirely. In truth, she simply didn't want to make swords anymore, as she despised those weapons. Unfortunately, she hadn't been successful in selling her household tools, yet her dream was to prove her worth as a craftswoman, even without forging swords. At that moment, Light recalled that the guide had specifically mentioned this workshop specialized in weapon making. It was then that Monica realized the boy had actually been looking for the shop across the street which, coincidentally, also carried the name Bolst. Inside that workshop, a smith ran up to the master to report that only 20% of the orders were ready so far. The boss replied that complaining wouldn't make the work go any faster, so everyone should do their best. Amidst this, Light and Ayla entered the workshop alongside Monica. All the smiths appeared uneasy with Monica's presence, so much so that when one of them approached to ask what she was doing there, the shop's boss immediately frowned. Without hesitation, Monica asked her father to forge a sword for the customer. Annoyed, her father grumbled that she was always avoiding dealing with customers and constantly passing them off to him, which quickly escalated into a heated argument between the two. Annoyed, Monica decided to leave there, but before departing, Light asked if it really wasn't possible for his sword to be made. The man explained that he was busy with a huge order for the next semester, so no chance. As Light stepped out of the store, he couldn't shake the thought that it would be amazing if Monica were the one to craft his weapon, but he had no idea how to persuade her. Just then, one of the blacksmiths called out to him by name, introducing himself as someone who worked for Monica's father, Evil. Light was baffled as to how this boy knew his name, prompting the blacksmith to explain that he had seen him during his duel against Grouse. The gap in strength between them had been so evident that Cain never forgot Light to the point where he even became a fan, recognizing the importance of his triumph. Since the topic had come up, Light scratched his head and admitted that the fight had stirred up a major issue with the Holy Sister, resulting in everyone who sided with her now keeping their distance from him. With that, the guy understood why Light had come to Bolst, as they were the only ones not aligned with the Holy Sister. And speaking of which, Light asked why father and daughter had separate workshops, so Cain told the story Monica used to work in Evil's workshop too. 3 years ago, when she gained the super forge ability, they quickly became very famous throughout the Holy City. However, 6 months earlier, a carriage transporting goods was ambushed on the outskirts of the city, and during the attack, Evil's mother lost her life. The culprits were eventually captured, but among them, one carried a sword that bore Monica's signature. Upon discovering that one of her own creations had been used to take her grandmother's life, Monica was devastated so much so that she developed a deep hatred for swords. After hearing the story, Light questioned why Monica and her father didn't get along. However, before Cain could respond, 2 men approached, asking for Evil. One of them, a brown-haired man, was Doug, while the other was Zamdo, both representatives of the Black Swan Merchant Group and clients of Bolst. Upon spotting the workshop's boss, Zamdo handed over a new order request, informing him that the weekly deliveries would now be extended to a full year. Cain complained that it was absurd, as they barely managed the weekly deliveries already. Doug replied that since the father couldn't manage, they would ask Monica, the girl with the super forge ability, a skill so rare that some blacksmiths would kill just to possess it. Light argued that Monica didn't want to make swords, but Zamdo assured that a little violence could change anyone's mind. Seeing the lightning crackling from the man's hand, Ayla immediately realized what that could only mean. Regardless, Evil calmly stated that he had never claimed he could fulfill the order. In reality, he had already signed the contract. With that, the Black Swan representatives departed. After they were gone, one of Ivil's employees revealed that this merchant group was using Monica as leverage to force these deals, leaving Ivil with no choice but to comply in order to protect his daughter. Since her father forged weapons, Monica couldn't bear to share the same workshop with him. Before anything else, Ivil turned to Light and asked him not to mention any of this to Monica. Later that night, Light and Ayla knocked on Monica's workshop and invited her to dinner. Without delay, the trio was already at a restaurant enjoying a good meal, and Monica was impressed to discover that Ayla had the appraisal skill because it's a very important technique in any workshop. However, Ayla mentioned that she only wished to adventure alongside Light and not become a craftsman. Monica praised her honesty and remarked that it must be amazing to be loved by such a kind girl. Overjoyed, she eagerly promised to cover the bill and even let Ayla order more pizza, her absolute favorite food. Light, however, recalled that they were the ones who had invited Monica in the first place, meaning she wasn't obligated to pay. Even so, she insisted that she still needed to repay them for saving her. Besides, she was genuinely happy, as it had been 6 months since she had shared a meal with company. With that in mind, Light tossed aside his nice guy salad and instead ordered a pizza topped with mushrooms, grilled meat seasoned with herbs, and a glass of grape juice. Meanwhile, Zamdo paid a visit to the Holy Sister, informing her that the weapons were already on their way. However, the most important news was that Light had made an appearance in the craftsman's district. Regarding this, the henchman assured her that he would bring the boy in soon, whether peacefully or not. Thus, the Holy Sister announced she would send a spy so that the security bureau wouldn't interfere, but made it clear she didn't want Light dead. Returning to Monica, she left the restaurant full, but Doug appeared again, wanting to chat with her. Monica recognized the man and didn't feel comfortable talking to him. However, another man suddenly appeared from behind her and captured Monica. Nearby, Ayla stressed that Monica was truly a great person, even if she had refused to forge Light's sword. Suddenly, Cain came rushing over, urging Light to come to their workshop immediately. Once they arrived, Cain pointed to a note that had been attached to the workshop door, alongside Monica's safety goggles. As Ayla explained, the message read, "Monica is with us. If you want her back, send Light alone to the underground arena." Another blacksmith approached and explained that this arena was the base of the Black Swan merchant group and was located near the craftsman's district. Amid this, Ivil left the forge wielding a huge two-handed axe and carrying a spear on his back. One of the employees asked the boss to be careful, as he could be ambushed by enemies if not cautious. Despite the warning, Ivil refused to stand by and do nothing while they took his daughter. However, Light declared that he would go alone, as the Black Swan had specifically requested only him, leaving no reason for Ivil to put himself in danger. With that decision made, Light rushed ahead, instructing them to look after Ayla in the meantime. Monica woke in an unknown place, and Doug smiled as he told her that Monica was just bait and that Light would be captured when he came to rescue her. Said and done, Light blasted the entrance and, ironically, thanked them for the invitation. Doug ordered Monica to be released. Then, the massive creature advanced toward Light, its heavy footsteps echoing with each step. Monica cried out, urging Light to run, but there was no time left. He was already under attack from all sides. Despite this, Light stayed composed, summoned the sleep fairy, and instantly put all his enemies to sleep, including the bull. With that done, he freed Monica and safely brought her back. A while later, Light arrived at the entrance of the workshop with Monica on his back. Along the way, she had accidentally inhaled some of the sleep dust, but Light reassured everyone that she was simply having a light nap and would be fine. In the end, for everything Light had done, Ivil expressed his gratitude. Back with the Holy Sister, the boy who always accompanied her questioned whether it was truly necessary to expend so many resources just to capture Light. She affirmed that it was because discovering whether he was truly a priori was of utmost importance. Zamdo rode in his carriage toward Monica's location, his mind still lingering on the Holy Sister's cryptic words about preserving Light. Her insistence on the child's importance puzzled him. Why did she value Monica so much? But what truly mattered was that by now, he should have already fallen into the carefully prepared trap, with Zamdo arrive only to reap the rewards. However, the moment he stepped into the room where Monica was held, he was met with an unexpected scene. All of his men lay on the floor, merely asleep. At At the Bolst workshop, Light listened as Evil offered his deepest regrets for dragging him into his problems. However, the protagonist reminded him that the Black Swan wasn't just targeting the blacksmith's daughter, it was after Light as well. On that note, Evil made up his mind to sever all ties with the sinister merchant group. Even if it meant his earnings would drop to nothing for a while, nothing held greater value than the safety of his family. As the conversation unfolded, Monica hurried down the stairs and asked if her father intended to stop making weapons. Evil responded that he wouldn't, but he needed to find a more trustworthy buyer. After all, when it comes to the items that can be crafted in a forge, weapons and equipment hold the greatest value. Offended by the remark, given that she no longer crafts weapons, Monica hesitated before reluctantly agreeing. Her father then added that if he wanted to keep his business afloat, he had to produce valuable items. After all, he had been running this workshop for 25 years and took great pride in the confidence that experience had given him. Feeling indignant, Monica demands to know if her father isn't bothered by the fact that the product of his pride is being used for evil. However, weakened by the effects of the sleeping powder, she begins to lose strength and nearly collapses. Evil's wife, who is tending to Monica's recovery, intervenes and suggests that the discussion be postponed, as the girl needs to rest. On that note, Evil invites Light to stay the night at the workshop, as it is already too late to search for another place. His wife insists on the offer, kindly preparing clothes and a bath for both him and Ayla. Completely exhausted, when asked for her opinion, Ayla only wants to lie down right away. With that settled, Light expresses his gratitude for their hospitality and accepts the invitation. As they were being led to the room, Light couldn't help but comment on how important this shop seemed to be for everyone. The woman smiled, explaining that everyone admired Evil and dreamed of working there forever. Curious, Light asked if she also crafted weapons, but she shook her head, clarifying that she wasn't a craftswoman. Instead, she managed the cooking, laundry, and childcare. In other words, she was a housewife. That's why, when her husband and Monica argue, she prefers not to interfere, as these matters involve the essence of being a craftsman, which she indeed does not understand, so the woman feels she doesn't have much influence over the two. Light disagrees because Monica often speaks positively of her stepmother, so she should have more confidence in herself. Later, instead of sleeping, Monica sat on her balcony, staring at a dagger in her hand. Light approached and asked if she was feeling better, to which she replied that she was the effects of the sleeping powder had completely worn off. Curious about Ayla's condition, Monica asked how she was doing, and Light reassured her that she was resting peacefully. Apparently, while he went to rescue Monica, Ayla had waited outside until they returned. With that, he questions what Monica is holding, and she explains that it was the first dagger she made as a child. Although her father rarely praises anyone, when he saw that his daughter produced that weapon, he said she had a knack for it, and Monica was remembering how that made her happy. When she acquired the super forge skill, Monica was sure that her destiny was to be a blacksmith. However, as she examined the dagger now, it was evident that it had turned out slightly crooked. Light then asked if she had a great deal of respect for her father. Monica confirmed that she did, as he was the one who had taught her everything she knew about forging. She had witnessed the workshop's entire journey, watching it grow and attract more and more apprentices. By the way, Light asks if she thinks it would be possible for her friend to reconcile with her father. She replies that for her, working in the forge yielded good compliments, good friends, and good money, just fun things that she loved. But after the incident with her grandmother, Monica realized there was more to it. By then, she had already made several swords around the world, so she started to fear making more and decided not to stay in the workshop with her father. Seizing the moment, Monica asked if Light had ever taken a life. Though he hesitated for a few seconds before responding, he eventually admitted that he had. He explained that his opponents were undead, though they had once been human. Initially, he doubted whether he would be capable of such a thing, but in the end, he resolved that if it meant protecting Ayla, he would do whatever was necessary. About this, honestly, Monica no longer knows if swords are good or bad things, so she asks if Light uses weapons for good, He considers that yes, but emphasizes that his concept of what is good or not might be different from hers. For example, he questions if Monica considers it good that he, as an adventurer, eliminates his enemies. Thinking about it, Monica is not sure, but she admits she likes it when someone fights to achieve their dreams. Hours later, Doug slowly opened his eyes and found himself trapped in the same place where Monica had been held, only to see his boss standing before him. Confused, he asked what was happening, to which Zamdo explained that Doug was already there when he had arrived. On that note, Zamdo wondered if Doug would be weak enough to simply swallow this humiliation, as he already had a plan ready to be set in motion, and this time, he vowed to crush Light with his own hands. Zamdo informs his men that they will set off at dawn. The next morning, Ayla hurries to call Light for breakfast. As he heads to the kitchen, he asks about Ivil and his apprentices, only to learn from the boss's wife that they're already hard at work. Impressed by their early start, Light moves to take a seat at the table, but before he can sit, Ayla warns him that only Monica is allowed to sit there. Monica's stepmother affirmed that they did, in fact, keep that seat open for the girl. On that note, she asked Light if he could bring Monica's breakfast to her room later, as she might feel too shy to join the other guests in the kitchen. Later, Light can't find Monica in her room, but eventually spots her in the garden of the workshop. He delivers her meal and expresses surprise at her not being in her own workshop. Monica explains that she worried everyone yesterday, so she decided to make it up to them somehow, out in the garden. Light asked if the workshop members grew anything. Monica explained that they did, though this year's harvest had been rather small. In response, Light used his ability to accelerate the growth of the fruits. Seeing his power in action, Monica couldn't help but wonder how he had managed to put the Black Swan men to sleep, as that would require a completely different kind of skill. Then, Light reveals that being the Fruitmaster allows him to consume any skill fruit he desires. Disbelieving, Monica shakes him by the collar and argues that consuming those is fatal, but a suspicious noise suddenly diverts their attention. Inside the workshop, led by Zamdo, the Black Swan's henchmen keep the blacksmiths under control through violence, and Zamdo invites Light for a walk outside. Once outside, Zamdo sarcastically commented that Light had certainly taken good care of his men the previous night. In response, Light remarked that since his opponents hadn't learned their lesson, they would be put to sleep once again. However, as he donned his enlightening armor, the villain effortlessly shook off the effects of the sleeping powder. When the protagonist uses his fairy, Ayla says the man possesses the lightning summoning ability, which allows him to surround himself with lightning or launch it. Raising his hand, Zamdo blows up the workshop wall and starts posing an even greater threat, prompting Light to stow his fairy and urge Monica to retreat with Ayla. Zamdo grumbled about the door Light had destroyed at their hideout, complaining that it had been quite expensive. However, Light had no patience for jokes, and instead called him out for the audacity of kidnapping Monica. As if trying to justify himself, Zamdo explained that he only needed the blacksmith to forge the necessary swords and was willing to do whatever it took to get them. After all, high-quality swords weren't something one could easily find at a low price. Throwing his own sword to the ground and stepping on it, Zamdo argues that Monica could do amazing things with her skill, unlike the junk he's using, since it was her father who made it. The girl takes offense and insists that all weapons made there are crafted with great effort. Growing weary of the conversation, Light firmly ordered his opponent to lift his foot off the sword. In response, Zamdo offered a deal, promising not to cause any further destruction in the workshop if both of them surrendered. However, Light had his own plan. He vowed to subdue his opponent and personally deliver Zamdo to the security office. From there, the obvious path was violence, and Light wastes no time in attacking the adversary with his broken sword. When Zamdo dodges the blow, the boy picks up the weapon he left on the ground to strike again with a sword god-style blade rush. However, Zamdo manages to keep distance with his lightning armor. Next, as Light hurled 3 electrified metal spheres at his target, Zamdo managed to block the first, but the other 2 struck him directly. Taking significant damage, the Fruitmaster collapsed to his knees, while his opponent coolly remarked that if Zamdo truly wanted to defeat him, paralyzing him would have been the quicker approach, but that wouldn't have made for nearly as satisfying a revenge. Zamdo keeps launching more spheres, forcing Light to block them with great effort, though he still gets hit by the last one. Observing the battle, Monica asks Ayla to analyze Zamdo's metal spheres. When the girl confirms they are made of iron, Monica isn't certain if her plan will work, but given the situation, she knows it's worth a shot. Using her forging ability, she quickly crafts one of her frying pans and instructs Light to catch the spheres inside it. Frustrated by the turn of events, Zamdo launched another attack, but instead of hitting his target, the spheres were effortlessly caught in the frying pan. Proud of her work, Monica explained that she had designed it to attract iron. Zamdo, though taken aback, admitted he was even more impressed by what the Superforge could do. However, before he could react, Light sent an electric current through the trapped spheres, electrocuting Zamdo on the spot. Ayla assesses the situation and explains that the sword didn't pose a problem because its handle is made of leather, but the frying pan conducts electricity. Obviously, Light is forced to drop the item, but assures that he has learned to protect himself from the trajectory of the spheres. However, observing her partner's defense, Monica notices that his sword is seriously chipped and about to break. Because of this, the blacksmith understands that she must forge a stronger, more resilient sword for him. However, this conflicts with her trauma, which led her to adopt a new code of conduct, one in which she vowed never to create anything that could harm others. Meanwhile, Light struggles to keep his opponent at bay until the security office arrives, but the injuries he has sustained are reaching their breaking point, putting his life in serious danger. Seeing clearly that her friend might die, Monica remembers the conversation they had last night as the fight between him and Zamdo causes even more devastation around them. Thus, Monica calls Ayla and runs to her workshop to resolve the situation once and for all. Meanwhile, on the western Yoruba Plateau, a carriage transported 4 passengers to their final destination, Blue Deer Station. Among them was Lena, who stepped off upon arrival, coinciding with the Athena Fairy Festival. A man inquired whether she had come for the event, but she replied that she was searching for someone. With a long journey still ahead, Lena pressed forward, resolute in her mission to find Draytna. Back at the duel, Light forced another strike with his blade, but Zamdo's electric shield proved impenetrable. In response to the young man's persistence with his weapon, the bandit decided to summon his own by manipulating his lightning. Throughout, Light never seemed to lose confidence. On the contrary, thinking the sword made of lightning couldn't be solid, he struck again. If, as Zamdo had claimed, his rival's weapon was truly as tough as steel, then even lightning, despite having no physical form, could imitate immense hardness when compressed. Even so, Light was convinced that his skill in swordsmanship still gave him the upper hand, and with that belief driving him, he launched himself into the attack. Incredibly, Zamdo managed to manipulate his sword to pierce through the opponent's blade, allowing for a surprise counterattack that hit Light. Yet, even if he had to push his sword god ability to the limit, Light continued the offensive to win the duel. But during an exchange of blows, he took a kick to the stomach that was deeply felt. Despite his worsening injuries, the boy continued to fight, determined not to lose this time. Unleashing the powerful instant whirlwind technique, he sent his opponent crashing into the wall and realized that the wind pressure had an effect on Zamdo. However, to his frustration, the bandit emerged from the impact looking far less shaken than Light had hoped, looking untouched. The man confessed he was just playing swords to make the fight more interesting and to stay on par with Light, but the truth was that the recent gust of wind had really infuriated him. Light mocked that even the way the guy talked had changed, to which he replied that indeed, the fun and games were over. With that, Zamdo commanded Jubatus to take the form of a feline creature forged from lightning. Relying on his previously successful strategy, Light unleashed another instant whirlwind, but this time, the beast sliced through the wind and sank its fangs into his sword. Realizing that his weapon was on the verge of breaking, Light desperately fought to free himself from the creature's grip. However, he was caught off guard by Zamdo's sword, which struck with immense force, triggering a real explosion upon impact. That decisive blow ultimately brought Light down, marking the end of the battle. Watch this next video on screen and subscribe to not miss next part.